Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
It is a time of restoration. The Empire has fallen, and the new Republic begins to establish peace throughout the galaxy. But in the far reaches of the Outer Rim, where lawlessness and corruption still exist, a lone gunfighter emerges. Join Cyber Ren and D. Vizsla as they track the adventures of the Mandalorian. This is the MandaLore Podcast.
That is right. Welcome to the MandaLore. You know, David, I said it last week, and I really like how it sounded. We are the definitive podcast for the Mandalorian. Now, if you look up the word definitive in the dictionary, it says the most reliable and complete as of text, writing, or, well, let's just put podcast in there as well. So, yeah, I like definitive. That's what we are. I'm Cyber Ren.
And I'm D. Vizsla.
And we're here bringing you one last preseason show to talk about the Clone Wars and Rebels episodes that highlighted some Mandalorian information. We got 2 days, D. Vizsla. 2 days.
Yeah, actually, it's probably just a tad little less than that. But no, who's counting? We are, because I cannot wait for the show.
It'll all depend on your time zone and what time it's actually released.
That's right. And there's rumors about that, so we can talk about that later. But I'm hearing a definitive, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Now, I still have not figured out how to watch it up here in Canada. As far as I know, you can get it if you have an Apple TV box. You can get it on there. PS4, Xbox One. Mm-hmm. I have tried to download the app. The Disney Plus app is not even available up here yet. So I have a feeling they're going to launch it the day of. Mm-hmm. So first thing in the morning or whatever time they're going to launch the app, you're going to have to download it, log in, create your account, whatever, and then I guess pay for it. I'm not sure. I have no idea of what's going on. To me, it's a little bit silly. You should have the app available so people can be ready and prepared, because you know what's going to happen? There's going to be millions of people trying to get this thing all at once, and it's going to screw up the system, as you know always happens with these technicality things.
Totally agree. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not available. I keep going to the App Store and trying to see if it's available, but no go. So,
not even down there in the States either.
No, not at all. There's nothing. Okay. There's still just a big countdown on DisneyPlus.com.
Right.
StarWars.com has a countdown, so nothing. No app availability, no instructions, nothing like that.
But you were able to sign up and pay for it already?
Yes, you can sign up. You can still do that on the website. You can still sign up and pay, but it doesn't tell you at all about what to do when it comes available.
Right.
So I'm with you. I'm going to probably get it on my Xbox, and there's going to be an app that you could download. But yeah, if everybody goes at once, it's going to cause some problems like it does with everything else everybody tries to do.
It could. Oh, wow. Well, I guess we'll have to see. I might have to just call in sick on that day and make sure I'm home and just keep trying all day until I get it.
I'm hearing that 6 a.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday morning is when it's available.
Okay. Cool. Well, there we go, guys.
Which means I'm going to be watching The Mandalorian at 6:01.
I'm gonna be sitting at work while you've already watched it 7 times by the time I get home.
That's right.
All right, guys. Well, it's gonna be so much fun. We've already kicked it off with some news, so let's get into some real news. We got a few more things we want to fill you guys in on. Let's start the show off. That's right. It's gonna be explosive. So, I posted on our Facebook page, there was a brand new Vanity Fair teaser trailer that came out, and it had a few new things in it. A lot of the same footage, but I found some of the scenes we are seeing over again, but from different camera angles. But this time, something we've been waiting for is seeing the Ugnaught, played by Nick Nolte. He is actually there speaking and with a few lines, talking to the Mandalorian. It does not look CGI to me at all, like we were speculating. It looks full-on mask and makeup. And I'm guessing if it is Nick Nolte playing the part, and you're still speculating about that, they're probably, because Ugnaughts are a lot smaller, they're probably doing those camera tricks, those filming tricks, using different angles to make him look like he's smaller and shorter so that he's actually there. Now, I paused the trailer clip and went frame by frame on it, and you can see individual hair moving around. It is definitely real. It is not CGI. I think it's Nick Nolte. To me, it looks a lot like him, but you're thinking it might still just be an actor and Nick Nolte's only voicing him, eh?
I am. And the only reason I say that is that with the Vanity Fair article that they released as well as with the video, I'm trying to recall it. I'm trying to find it again. But I think they mentioned his name voicing the Ugnaught.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if by saying that, when I read that, I was thinking that he's not actually acting with the makeup on, that they have an actor there that's doing the motions. And I agree with you. I think it is full practical makeup, no CGI, but I think he came in to do the voice of it is what I'm leaning towards.
Okay. Even still, I mean, they even if that's the case, they still actually made it look like him. Because if you look at the image, I can see Nick Nolte in that. It does look like him.
It's definitely in his likeness. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I'm glad that it's not CGI, because we know we've had too much of that in previous Star Wars iterations, like the prequels and stuff. So the fact that they're going full practical, it just pulls you in as a viewer. It makes it more believable that these characters are actually there and not our actors having to, play against a green screen and just pretending there's something in front of them. You can tell when they're doing that. So this just gives it a scope of reality, which I always appreciate.
Yeah, and they've done some amazing advancements with animatronics, and because it looks like his voice. I don't know if the Ugnaught. I don't know if he's speaking with if the actor is moving his mouth, or if it looks like it's almost like an animatronic. Because you look at these things that they're creating at like Disneyland and Disney World and Galaxy's Edge with some characters, some animatronics. I mean, they look so real. It's uncanny now. So. Yeah, practicality definitely sells it more for sure.
Yeah, totally. Now, there was there's been a couple TV spots or like TV features. They're like 12 to 25 second long, just quick little hits that you see as quick commercial breaks. And there's been a couple of them that have come out, and we have two other characters that have finally spoken. And who's that?
Well, we finally get Gina Carano's character, Cara Dune, speaking in one of the spots. And then, of course, we finally I think it was released this morning.
Yeah.
We hear IG-11 speak his first words.
Finally. And it's so funny because they each only get one line. Cara Dune says, "Who are they waiting for?" And he responds by saying,
"The Mandalorian." Yes. Yes, Taika Waititi.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I watch it a few times here, and he kind of has a C-3PO kind of sound to him. I don't know if it's the accent or just the way he speaks. It kind of has that upper class. I'm a hoity-toity, ritzy kind of android kind of sound to him. You know what I mean?
I do, and Cara, it's crazy because obviously you can see that they're somehow starting to work together. They're in this group together, they're talking about each other. They're talking about the Mandalorian. So it's funny that they're referring to the Mandalorian, It's crazy because we talked about it on the last episode. You brought it up as when are we going to actually hear a name? Or is it always going to be the Mandalorian? Because I'm curious to whether or not they know who he is.
Yeah, if he's revealed his identity to them or not.
Right.
And the fact that they keep calling him or referring to him as the Mandalorian, it makes you think, well, isn't there a whole planet of Mandalorians? Why does he get the distinction of being the one?
Right.
Unless no one's ever been to his planet or to that system, and they just relate the armor to being Mandalorian, and since he's the only one that they know, that's why they're calling him the Mandalorian. I mean, if it was Boba Fett there, they'd probably just call him, hey, that's the Mandalorian as well. I don't know.
Yeah, very true. Well, two things. One, something might have happened to the Mandalorians to where they don't think that they exist anymore, and he is the only one, or he just has built this reputation up over the last 5 or 6 years, and he's just been dubbed the Mandalorian, like somebody that wins a lot of money. I mean, he's the gambler or something like that, so no one can beat this guy, so he's a one-name guy, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I guess that ties into when we've heard a couple of characters say, "I've heard you're the best there is." So maybe that is just reputation, and he doesn't want anybody to know his identity anyway. That's why he keeps his mask on, and yeah.
And then, of course, Nick Nolte's character, the Ugnaught, mentions about that he's only heard legends of them. Mandalorians. He's never seen one before.
I've never met a Mandalorian before. I've only read the stories or something like that, he says. Yeah.
And in fact, in that same Vanity article, I just found, again, the name of the Ugnaught has been revealed. Did you see that?
No, I did not see that. What's his name?
His name, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. It's Cooley.
Cooley.
Maybe. It's Kill, because it's Kuiil.
Kuiil.
Quill. Kill.
Quill, maybe? Quill?
Yeah.
Boy,
your guess
someone's
is as good
gonna
as
have
mine.
Yeah.
No one's. We haven't heard it yet, so I'm sure in the first episode maybe we'll hear it.
Well, if we ever had any Ugnaughts with names before, like if you think back to Empire Strikes Back on Cloud City, did any of them have names? I don't recall any of them having names, so...
No, none of those have had names.
Yeah, so this might be the first. I guess one of them is going to have to speak it, and then we'll know.
Right. But that was revealed in the Vanity Fair article.
All right. Well, good. At least we know that, because instead of just keep calling them the Ugnaught, we'll be able to pronounce their names eventually.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing that I noticed in the trailer here, I saw speeder bikes for the first time with scout troopers, and I haven't seen them since Return of the Jedi when they're racing through the Redwood Forest. It was cool to see them ripping through the desert in this trailer. So that was just a neat thing to see that they're pulling those guys in. It
was, and we're seeing all kinds of troopers now that we've seen. Those are scout troopers that we've talked about before. We've seen stormtroopers, we've seen death troopers. I mean, we're seeing the whole gauntlet of troopers in these things. They're still around, or at least wearing the armor. Because
this does take place soon after Return of the Jedi, so it makes sense that they're still going to be around. That's cool. Very, very cool. Now, we also see the Razor Crest itself jump to light speed. Now, because we were talking last episode about it, is this all going to be on Mandalore? Are we going to be stuck on one planet? Because all we ever see is the ship flying around the surface. But in this clip, we see it jump to light speed, so we know at least he's traveling to different planets and locations.
Yeah, I think that's definitely was one of our main topics, was that he is taking different jobs, and they're going to take him around different planets and part of the galaxy to get his bounty. So... I think we're going to see several locations in this series for sure.
Hopefully some familiar too.
Right.
That would be cool. That would be cool. Now, do you know what the name of this creature that he's fighting? There's that gigantic horned rhino-looking thing that we've seen in a few of the trailers. And in this one, he pulls out a flamethrower as it's charging him down. Any idea what that creature is?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like what's called a reek. REEK, which is in episode 2, the Attack of the Clones, in the arena.
Oh, that's one of the things in the arena. Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's I don't know for sure if it's the exact one, but it looks like that big rhino-looking thing that Anakin jumps on. Kind of charged him like a bull. It's the one that caused Jango to lose his battle, basically, because it ran him over. I'm not sure if it's the same thing or not.
Interesting. It was just a cool little shot they showed. I mean, he's using a flamethrower from his wrist, so more gadgets we did not know the Mandalorian armor has on it. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know what that context of that scene, why he would be in there trying to fight that thing. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Now, I think probably the coolest part of this new TV spot for me was the fact that we saw Ming-Na Wen from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She makes her appearance. She is here for this season. At least I'm guessing. Is that a tease? Is just a clip from season 2, or does this mean she's going to be here? Do you have any info about her there?
Well, again, the only info that I have on her is from the Vanity Fair article as well, which does say that she is an assassin and she comes in contact with the Mandalorian midway through this season.
Okay, so she's here for the first season. Awesome.
So I think probably episode 4, episode 5. we probably run into her. And it also is revealed the character's name, which is Fennec Shand.
That is such a strange name, Fennec.
Yes.
Like, is that a family relation? Like Fennec? I guess with these different planets and aliens and everything in galaxy far, far away, I mean, you can be, but Fennec just sounds like an odd name.
Well, they say in the Vanity Fair.
Like her.
Well, they say in the Vanity Fair. It's funny you said the name because they say in the Vanity Fair article that the idea came from the Fennec Fox, which she's tricky. She's able to maneuver and survive, be stealthy, very graceful and agile.
Makes sense.
So that's the inspiration that came with the name. But there's also a really deep pull here, if you want me to go into it.
Yeah. What's the deep pull? Something attached to that name.
Yes. So the name Shand has come up recently in the Star Wars universe. No one would know this unless they do a deep dive into the visual dictionaries that are written by Pablo Hidalgo, who is part of the Lucasfilm Story Group, one of the lead creatives. He writes all the visual dictionaries for all the films. And the one for The Force Awakens, now there's a group in there that hunt down Han Solo called the Conja Club. There are the ones that are on the ship when the Rathars are released by Finn and Rey,
Right. There's two groups that kind of get on the ship there, and they're both looking for him.
Exactly. They both owe him money, or they both owed money by Han Solo.
Right.
And Conja Club, which is led by Balatik and oh gosh, I forgot his name already. I was just talking about him. But one of the other group members, again, not identified in the movie, but in the visual dictionary, is named Kroken Shand. So the Shand name is attached, is the same. So it's I don't know. It's possible that they're related, or she's part of this group. Maybe Conja Club is alive and well during this time still, or she starts the group. I don't know.
She starts the group, yeah. Because the time of the Mandalorian and the time of Force Awakens, it's 20 plus years between the two, so she could be the beginning of that. Yeah,
she could be his mother. I mean. But that name has been introduced before, and and that's the little things. Hopefully, we can find in these connections, because that might come up. You never know.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's great that there are these little connections that the casual viewer might not pick up on. So that's cool that we're catching those now. And I wanted to ask you because she's wearing kind of a uniform that it looks like it has some kind of symbolism on her right chest. I don't know if that means anything. Did that look familiar to you at all, what she was wearing?
That didn't look familiar to me. I was kind of trying to reach back to and see if I can see anything from that, but that doesn't look. I mean, it looks almost like it's signifying some level of officer or military status, but I don't. I mean, she's an assassin, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what rank that would be.
Could just be a disguise too. If she's an assassin.
Actually, you're right. It could be. Yeah.
Now she does speak. She says, "Your name will be legendary," and she's talking to the Mandalorian. We're assuming because they don't actually show who she's talking to. You know how these trailers get edited together. It's to throw us all off base. But if she is talking to the Mandalorian, what could that mean? Your name will be legendary. She's obviously talking about who he is, because I can't imagine Mandalorian being the legendary name. So what do you think that means?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think
theory.
Yeah, my theory is that he's somebody that we know, or I think he has a name that's possibly familiar. And I think, again, it is going to go back to one of the clans that we've been talking about, possibly either a Vizsla, a Ren, or a Kreets. It's like, could he be one of those names from Mandalore that we kind of know that has a big history, and that legendary name is bound to do something? And I think she knows who he is, obviously, and I think she kind of knows his destiny. that we'll see it played out in this show. I think that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to find out because it's like I said, these trailers could lead you all in the wrong directions, which is what they're designed to do. So who knows? We'll have to see what it is when she does show up, and hopefully they will connect us or connect her to him for us so we understand the story, what it is, why does she know him, if in fact it is him she's talking to. Right,
because that's the other thing is like, what if, God, I kind of would hate this, but what if she's talking to whoever's hiring her? It could be Werner Herzog, it could be, Gideon, Moff Gideon, and she just could be playing into them saying, oh, your name's going to be legendary. It's like, that would be so misleading, but,
But they've done it before.
They have.
All right, now you've got some details here, because we were talking about how last week some critics have seen 30 minutes from the first 3 episodes. Now, they've actually gone ahead and released some details of the first 3 episodes. Why don't you fill us in on what that's been?
That's right. So Lucasfilm does a good job. They actually do this for all their TV shows. They release details and synopsises, real short things of each episode that's coming out. So they've released the first 3, which it looks like they're not going by episode numbers, but they're actually titling these things by chapters.
Oh.
So,
interesting.
Yeah, so chapter 1 of The Mandalorian, the details or the synopsis is a Mandalorian bounty hunter tracks a target for a well-paying client. The client, we're assuming, is Werner Herzog, which we've seen in the trailers.
Yes. Yeah.
This one is directed by Dave Filoni, which is responsible for the Clone Wars as well as Star Wars Rebels as executive director. And all of these are written by Jon Favreau.
Which is awesome.
Yes.
They're kicking it off strong with a bang.
Yeah, so obviously we mentioned him too. He's director of Iron Man, Jungle Book, Lion King, the live-action versions. Yeah. Chapter 2, the synopsis goes as target in hand, the Mandalorian must now contend with scavengers.
Okay, see, this is all tying back to what we've seen in the trailer. So Chapter 1 looks a lot, or sounds a lot like what we've already seen in most of the trailers. Chapter 2, contend with scavengers. I'm guessing that's the Trandoshans that we've seen him fighting.
Mm-hmm.
That it just makes sense, because I can't see them showing too much from episodes farther down the line that they don't want us to see yet.
Yeah, I think that everything we've seen is from the first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen anything beyond that, besides maybe Ming-Na Wen. Besides her footage, I think that's the only footage beyond these 3 episodes, because she came in a little late.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That one is directed by I'm going to kill his name, Rick Famuyiwa.
That's a tough one.
Famuyiwa, yeah.
Famuyiwa. Yeah.
Now the movie he directed, which is called Dope, I've actually heard some people talking about that online, and Dope is a very, very highly acclaimed movie. So,
okay.
So big ups for him. Hopefully he did a great job. Chapter 3 goes as the battered Mandalorian returns to his client for reward.
Okay, they know what that. Come on, for a chapter synopsis. The entire hour-long episode is not going to be him coming back to collect his reward. Come on, there's going to be more to it than that.
Agreed. But what they're doing, right, keeping it secret.
Yeah, which is good. Again,
Chapter 3, directed by Deborah Cho, who has directing credits for The High Cost of Living, Mr. Robot, and then she has been tapped as the executive producer and director for the Obi-Wan series that's coming out.
Cool. Okay, so they obviously trust in her a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So not on the list, obviously, yet is Taika Waititi's episode and Bryce Dallas Howard's episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure those are coming for sure.
That's
I
right.
mean, that's a start. We got to start, and they're kicking it off strong. So, and we get, like we were talking about, we get the first 2 episodes in this first week, so we'll have a good jump on things for sure, and where it's going. 2 days, 2 episodes. Wow.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. Oh my gosh, yeah.
All right, well, let's move into what this episode is all about, and that is talking about some Clone Wars and some Rebels. Let's get into that.
What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
All right, so let's kick this off with some Clone Wars episodes. I think how we should tackle this is maybe with an overall discussion on what we saw take place on the planet of Mandalore, but start getting into the format of our show a little bit. So I'm going to pull in a few small details that I just happened to highlight while I was watching the episodes, and we could talk a bit about them. And then if you see anything at all that might potentially connect to our new show, and you see something there, then you can bring it up and we can talk a bit about it. Sound good?
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
All right. So for me overall so far, what I'm noting, and you've probably watched these episodes multiple times compared to me, what I'm noticing at first is that this planet, the Mandalore, is not at all what you would expect. This isn't what you'd imagine bounty hunters, like galaxy-famous bounty hunters, would come from. It's peaceful, it's neutral in all the politics, and it seems to operate like a lot of the planets we've seen that have these large cities in the Star Wars universe. We get introduced to a lot of the characters that you've mentioned, like Pre Vizsla and the ideas of Death Watch, but there's so much more going on behind the scenes. And once you see the corruption and people wanting it to go back to their warrior ways, you realize all is not as it seems.
Yes, and the biggest thing right away to connect possibly back to the show is this idea that Mandalore is not just a single planet. The Mandalore sector is a group of thousands of planets that are all neutral, at least back in the Clone Wars days, and tried to stay neutral throughout the Galactic Empire. And there's a lot going on all these planets, and we may see a lot of them, I think, in this series.
Okay, so that answers a question I had in one of the notes coming up, is that Mandalore is not just a planet. It seems to have many planets, many moons, and you're telling us that it actually is a system. It's kind of like our solar system here. We've only got 9 planets, or 10, depending on what beliefs you follow, but Mandalore has, you're saying, thousands of planets, so they must have a whole ton of solar systems that they're in control. Like you said, it's a sector of space, and if you think back to, I guess you're sort of cross paths here, but your Star Trek information, a sector is actually quite a huge chunk of space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Interesting. Okay, so very, very cool. Well, let's start off with the very first one, which was season 2, episode 12, called The Mandalore Plot. I'm just going to pull out a couple points here, and you can share your thoughts on them. And what I noticed in this one is the Duchess Satine. She's a lot like Leia, like Princess Leia, in the sense of she's snarky, she has a bit of an attitude, and she's a lot tougher than her first appearance would lead you to believe. She's actually really resilient and tough. And she's actually, her last name is Kryze. Is that how you pronounce it? Kryze? Kryze, okay.
Yes.
So yeah, I just found that. I thought, she's very Leia-like.
She is very Leia-like, and she's very strong-willed, and she's very strong in her beliefs, which is no war should come to this planet, and she's trying to keep them safe.
Right, which is also very much like Leia and her own planet. Yeah. And this, I mean, we'll get into this a little bit more, but that's why I said this planet is not what you thought it would be, because when you hear about Mandalore and their warrior race, and when you imagine Boba Fett and all these bounty hunters that get their armor from there, you don't expect it to be such a peaceful planet and trying to stay out of war and all that. It's completely opposite of what you would have imagined. Maybe like you would imagine more a worn-torn surface, and it just a different look, and yet it was very pristine, very clean, and a very nice city like we've seen on some of the other planets.
Yeah, the cities are, but you do notice, and it took me to rewatch this again because I haven't seen this, and I actually haven't seen this group of episodes for a long time, because you imagine these came out somewhere around 2010.
Yeah.
And if you notice, the city's covered in like a dome protection. Right? So the planet is covered in sand and desert, and that's because of the wars, of thousands and thousands of years of wars has really just kind of decimated the planet. But they've built up since then and created these good-looking cities and civilizations and peace and stuff like that. So it's taken a while to get there.
And that ties into what we were talking about last week. Is Mandalore is a desert-like planet, and what if the trailers we're seeing are actually on the planet Mandalore? Because it is a very desolate-looking scape out there. So
right
now we also see Pre Vizsla, which you have brought up several times before. We actually get to meet him, who's voiced by Jon Favreau, and he's the leader of Death Watch. That was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, he's the leader of Death Watch. So, and his name, like we just kind of been hinting at, his name has been passed down generations through generations, and his ultimate ancestor is one of the beginning one of the Force sensitive characters that had joined the Jedi. Yeah, that we talked about.
Yeah, he'll get mentioned later on in one of the other episodes. So, yeah, exactly. Now, the other thing that came out here, which you have also talked about, is the dark saber. And I tell you, that thing looks so cool. That I've never seen a black lightsaber. It looks amazing.
And that was the first time you saw it, right?
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
Now, what I was shocked by is that it is more shaped like an actual sword. It actually has a sword blade that you would recognize, not like a normal lightsaber.
Yeah, so the creation of this saber has not been technically revealed yet, and how it came to be. Why is it look like that? What kind of crystal does it have? Does it actually have a kyber crystal? Because I'm not exactly sure that it actually has a kyber crystal, but I think it does. But there are no black crystals, so they're all clear. Why it's a black blade? It could be just a anomaly, but yeah, why it looks like that, we just haven't been told exactly why yet.
Well, and it's a different hilt too. It's not your typical round hilt. It's actually a very flat hilt. And they do mention later on in one of the Rebels episodes, they actually say, one of the guys says the crystal powers it, so that it is a crystal of some kind.
It is.
That powers it.
But I haven't heard whether or not if it's I'm sure it is a kyber crystal that's in there, but where did it come from? How it got into there, how did Tar Vizsla make it? Because, the history of the Jedi are that when you're young or anybody that's creating their lightsabers, the crystal calls to you, and you find the crystal, you create you build your saber through the Force, and then the color of the blade kind of represents your inner soul and being in connection to the Force. So some are blue, some are green. Others times it's been purple. It's been, it hasn't been yellow. That's usually the color of the temple guards. But either way, that's the black. I don't know how that comes about. We don't know that yet.
Now, is this the first time that we ever see it or even hear about it? Is here in this episode of Clone Wars?
It is.
Okay.
That first mention of it. So yes. So you can imagine as you're watching this back in 10 years ago, it's like, what are you talking about? Where did this come from?
What is that? Yeah, because they don't really give you its history until a little bit later. So
well, he briefly mentions
part of it.
Yeah, so he briefly mentions like in 2 lines, like my ancestor Tar Vizsla created this saber. And, it's like what?
Yeah,
and that's all we got. That's all we got ever for a long time.
Yeah, fascinating. Cool. Well, I mean, that's pretty much what I pulled out of this first episode. If you had anything else to share with us, we'll move on to the next one.
No, I think that episode really just laid out some groundwork for who the Mandalorians were at the time of that episode, and then the introduction of Death Watch.
Well, remind us, so that where we're watching the Clone Wars, what in the timeline of Star Wars, when is this taking place? So we're on Mandalore right now. Duchess Satine is in charge. Where are we in the timeline of Star Wars?
So in the timeline, the Clone Wars happened between the 3 years between Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, right.
So this is roughly 27, 28 years.
27, 28K. So there's some time. So what we're seeing now, it's going to be different than what we see on our show. So this is a great history, like you said. It kind of shows us what Mandalore once was, and is maybe leading up to, you know, to the Mandalorian TV show. It's going to lead up to what has happened on that planet, what's going on, why is our main character out to do whatever he's going to do, like, you know, especially with that line, your name's going to become legendary, all these different things. I can see a very long reach of connection there by showing us the history of Mandalore, what it used to be when it was once peaceful, to the Empire taking it over, to where we are now. I mean, this is just a piece of the puzzle. It's the beginning, so it's very cool introduction. Very cool. I think. All right, well, the next episode is called Voyage of Temptation. That was season 2, episode 13. Now we get Obi-Wan here. Mr. Kenobi himself comes to visit. Him and Satine, I just had to laugh because they were so at each other. It was like watching a divorced couple.
That's right. That's right.
You know, just unwilling to express, you know, that they actually care for each other. They're trying to act professional. They're being super snarky with each other. It was just fun to watch. And I was before they even let us know later on in one of the other episodes, I was already going, there's some history here with these two. Something's gone on between them, or there's a whole bunch of built up emotion that they just have not been willing to express to each other.
Yeah,
something's going on here.
Well, it is great. It's great relationship there, and I think, aside from the whole Mandalorian connection right now, but that relationship really connects to Anakin and Padme, because it gives some context into Obi-Wan understanding where Anakin is in his life at that point. Yes. When he finds out that him and Padme are together, he doesn't approach them. He doesn't tell them that it's wrong. You know, he lets, because we know now that he was in the same situation. So that alone right there is phenomenal when you watch this arc right here about him and Satine. Yeah. Actually, that's a really great connection to make there. You are right. Mm-hmm. Something that was cool was just seeing these assassin droids. I thought they were just neat looking. Yeah, the spider droids, kind of. Yeah, just something cool to see them. Very cool. The way they come in there. I really like that. Now, I was already saying Mandalore is a very peaceful planet at this point in time. It's definitely not what you expect to see. But something that stood out to me here is that not everyone wears the armor. In fact, nobody does at this point. Because I think everybody that is more of a casual viewer and they think they know a little bit about Mandalore or Mandalorian armor, they think Boba Fett, they think Jango Fett. Mm-hmm. Oh, the entire planet, everyone must wear this armor because that's what they're known for. But nobody is wearing it. We haven't even seen the armor yet. In fact, the only armor belongs to the warriors, which Mandalore has gotten away from. So we don't see it until the Dark Watch people show up, right? Death Watch, yeah. Or sorry, Death Watch, yeah. Yeah, that's what you're familiar with, you know, because prior to this, we always thought Boba Fett was Mandalorian and all the Mandalorians wear that, but the warriors, the Mandalorian warriors are the ones that wore it. So kind of imagine it's like the Stormtrooper outfits almost, you know, all the warriors and fighters, they wore that kind of armor and had all the gadgets and all that stuff. So yeah, you don't see that with Mandalore at this point because, again, they're all peacekeepers and they just have like a police force right now that's wearing just normal, you know, guard outfits, I guess, or whatever you call it. But no, Death Watch is still the ones that have gathered up. And as you learn, as we talk about these later episodes, you learn that there's other pockets of protectors and Mandalorians around, and they do have this armor as well. Right. Yeah, I just found that interesting. So it's a little bit of a surprise. All right, now the next episode, season 2, episode 14, is the Duchess of Mandalore. Now, this one had a lot in it, which just kept surprising me. First off, before we go too far into it, Emperor Palpatine is in this one quite a bit, and I found him to be such an ass. You could see the darkness in him starting to come through. He doesn't even let Satine finish a sentence. He's constantly interrupting her, constantly cutting her off, doesn't let her,
let her voice her opinion or express what she's upset about. He just basically puts her down and treats her as if she doesn't have a place there to be saying anything at all. And in the process of doing all this, he's totally setting her up.
He is totally setting up. It's clear as day that he wants to occupy Mandalore. He wants to use that space, and she is not budging whatsoever.
No, not at all. And I can feel her frustration because she gets so aggravated with him and so just like she can barely contain her anger with how she was treated. And I can't help but feel for her because I was equally getting so frustrated with the way Palpatine was acting and the way the other monarchs were acting around her. I was like, wow, that poor girl.
Yeah, and just to mention too, again, the connection with back to Palpatine a little bit is, Death Watch under Pre Vizsla, he's working with Dooku, which is working obviously with Palpatine, right? So
yes,
Pre Vizsla's whole goal is he wants to take control of Mandalore. I mean, he wants to get Satine out. He wants the people to call to Death Watch as and as for guidance and making sure that they can protect Mandalore, and they want to incorporate the old ways back in. So that's what their goal is in this arc here.
Okay. Cool. Now, you kind of already answered this already, but so far the only armor that we see is on Death Watch, and you basically said the Mandalorian armor was only worn by the warriors. Now, Death Watch isn't the first one to wear the armor. That's not where the armor started. The armor is much older than that, right?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. But again, I think it's, as far as what I've read and what I've known, is that it's always been part of the warriors of Mandalore. So they've always wore these things as they were fighting amongst each other, as they were fighting the Jedi thousands of years ago. Okay. That's the history of it. It's just the Beskar metal that we mentioned last. It can withstand almost anything. So they're very formidable fighters. These Mandalorians are.
Yeah. So I guess from this episode, really what we can connect to stuff that's very well known is just seeing Palpatine have his fingers in this so much and kind of controlling the outcome and what's happening, because the Empire does eventually take over Mandalore. So that's where you can connect to the movies, because between episode 1, 2, and 3, where we saw Palpatine being part of the Senate and nobody knew he was who he was at the time, this just kind of fills in a bit more of that story and what he was doing behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a good introduction to letting everybody know how neutral the system was trying to be, through all these years. They weren't trying to be part of the rebellion. They weren't trying to be part of the Empire. They were really trying to govern themselves, which is what they've been doing for a long time. So it'd be interesting again to figure out when we see Mandalore in the series, what state it's in.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating to see. After watching these episodes, it'll be neat to see where it is at right now.
I gotta say, this is really fun hearing somebody see these episodes for the first time.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't gotten this far yet. I'm still finishing off season 1 in chronological order. So I'm still working my way through it. But it had to jump ahead to these ones and see what the Mandalore history is. So this is cool. Well, the next episode is called Corruption, and we're jumping into season 3, episode 5. Now, we already talked about Mandalore being quite a desert planet, and you said due to thousands of years of war. Now, what I thought probably the coolest thing about this episode, because she's pretty much there from start to finish, is we had Padme come to the aid of her friend Satine, and I thought that was a really cool connection to have those two actually be friends. I really enjoyed their chemistry together. It seemed like a very strong friendship, and they're willing to do almost anything for each other. I just like that Padme was there. She went through the adventure to help her in this episode, and again, it's another great connection to the movies, because people only know Padme from the prequel movies. We don't know anything about her, what she did between the scenes that we saw in the movies, because there's quite a few years that went by in those movies. So what else does she do? Well, here's a great example of it. She's helping her friend Satine, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, this episode, as it's called, Corruption, highlights a lot of corruption within the Senate and on Mandalore. And due to the politics of things, Padme's always in that part of those episodes because she's obviously the politician, the senator from Naboo. So Padme is phenomenal in the Clone Wars series. She's great.
Yeah, I really liked her. That's the first time I've seen her. I really liked her in this for sure. It was cool. They had a good friendship. It was really neat. I really liked their
right.
I mean, it's cartoon. I'm saying chemistry, but it's still the voice actors. They were just really played off each other really well. It's well done.
Oh, great chemistry between them. Yes.
Now you mentioned corruption because I'm going to move on to the next episode, episode 6, called The Academy, because this is the one where I went, wow, there's so much corruption in this city and in these politics. It goes all the way up the ranks because this episode continued that storyline of how corrupt the Mandalorian government actually is.
Yeah, we see it firsthand for sure here. With now Ahsoka shows up here, is going undercover, and she's helping train some of the Academy kids, which help uncover this corruption. But you find out that it goes pretty high up, and it's a very familiar character that they catch. It's been in these episodes.
And it was cool that she showed up because you were telling me, she grows up quite a bit throughout the Clone Wars. And even jumping from, because I'm just watching season 1 where she's quite a newcomer, quite a kid. She's a young Padawan. And here she is 3 seasons later, and there's already a huge noticeable difference in her maturity.
Yes. Yeah, she grows up fast during these 3 years, apparently, during the Clone Wars. So
yeah,
it's cool to see. She gets more mature. She gets more confident with herself. It's good to watch. It's good to watch, and she definitely excels in this episode for that.
Yeah, it was a good episode to see her kind of work with the cadets because they're kind of same age, so they were easily. It was easy for them to relate to her and rely on her Jedi experience and knowledge, so they could help her crack the case. They were trying to prove something, and yeah, it was a pretty fun episode for her. The one thing that I liked was those shock collars that they had. Man, those things were nasty. Holy cow. Because it wasn't like just a little zap. You could actually see electrical lightning going up and down from the holy. I was like, geez, that is a nasty piece of gear.
They do have some crazy weapons, the Mandalorians.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, well, jumping ahead 2 more seasons to season 5, episode 14, which was called Eminence. This one I got a few things to say on because there was a lot happening here. And I kind of chuckled because the way that Death Watch were talking and, we got to get back to our warrior ways. And, we used to be so much tougher. Now we're such a weakened planet with all this political peace and blah, blah, blah. They reminded me of the Klingons so much.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's funny. Yeah. They definitely want that. They definitely have the similar needs for sure.
Yeah. Now we get Darth Maul back again, and I guess if you haven't been watching the show all the way through, he's probably already appeared in it before this. But for me, jumping ahead, Darth Maul shows up and he's here, and I was really impressed by him here. I thought he was so much more what I expected him to be, so much better than he was in The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I can't wait till you watch his return, because his return is quite the journey. When he is discovered, what happened to him after episode 1, The Phantom Menace, to where he's discovered, and then how he gets to get back together. Because as you imagine, being cut in half causes problems.
It's not easy to survive that.
No, you have a long recovery from that, and he actually does have a long recovery. I think season 3 is when we first discover him, and he slowly comes back, and you find out his history, as it's hinted at in some of these episodes. You find out his history with the Night Sisters and stuff like that. So it's really phenomenal how he gets to where he is at this point, where he's in this ship. Floating through space where he's discovered by Death Watch. Yeah,
but once they wake him up and he's there with when he's saying brother, is it actual blood brother or just battle brother?
No, Savage is actually his brother, his blood brother. Yes,
because Savage is intimidating as hell. Holy crap! Even more so than Darth Maul himself.
Yeah, he's bigger than Darth Maul. So, just a brief history: the Night Sisters on Dathomir, which is where Maul is from, and Savage. Now, the Night Sisters trained these Zabrak men as warriors, and occasionally they would get recruited for as assassins or Well, apparently, I guess you find out Palpatine went to the Night Sisters and handpicked Maul to be his apprentice. So when he got killed, obviously, and replaced by Count Dooku during the Clone Wars, which you'll get to, he goes and tries to recruit another assassin, and he gets Savage Opress. So that's how he's introduced in the Clone Wars. He's kind of like the replacement of Darth Maul for Dooku. Right. And but again, you find out later that Darth Maul survives. So they team up and all that stuff. So it's a really cool storylines.
Yeah, well, like I said, he's really intimidating. And then when I found out it's because he's voiced by Clancy Brown. Yes. Clancy Brown has such a great, deep, husky voice. I've seen him. If you don't know who he is, just do a Google search, Clancy Brown. And that guy. He's been in so much. And he was in a show, I don't know if you ever remember the show Earth 2.
No, I didn't see that. I didn't see that one.
It only lasted one season. It was a sci-fi show where they discovered another Earth-like planet. So the spaceship goes on an expedition to go check it out and see what's going on there. And that's what the show's about, is this team on the spaceship. They eventually get there, and it's not exactly the same as our Earth. There's different life forms and different things going on. It was good. I wish I had gone on. But anyway, Clancy Brown was one of the actors there. It's just, he's so good. His voice, just, if you heard him talking to you in a dark alley, you'd be scared for your life.
Yes, you would. Every time I hear his name, I always think, which is one of my favorite movies, I think of Shawshank Redemption.
Right.
He's the cop, the bad cop in that.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal.
He's so good. So the fact that he's voicing this gigantic version of Darth Maul, his brother called Savage, and his power, like, he shows some force powers that we haven't seen before too, which is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of force powers that gets revealed in Clone Wars that you haven't really seen before.
Yeah. What else also happened in this episode, which surprised me because it's supposed to be a kids' cartoon? There was a lot of killing this episode. Holy man, it's not for kids anymore.
No, at season 5, there's no hold back. There was a lot. Yeah, these three episodes, this arc here is lots of deaths.
Lots of death, and they bring out the Darksaber again, so that was really cool. You see that again. Now, there's a scene because they also bring in the Hutts, younger version of Jabba, and a few of the other Hutts, because we don't get to see a lot of the Hutts. Everybody only knows Jabba the Hutt. Right. But there is a huge history of the Hutt family. They're one of the big families in this galaxy. And there's a scene where they go to visit the Hutts on one of their bases there, and you see a whole bunch of people jump up from behind the desks to, because the gunfight's about to ensue. I swear there's a very familiar looking bounty hunter from Empire Strikes Back when the camera pans across all the bounty hunters. Is that not Dengar with the wraps around his head?
That is Dengar. Cool. Yeah, he is in the Clone Wars, yep.
We haven't seen him since Empire Strikes Back, when he's just standing there, and I didn't realize that was a turban-like thing on his head. I always thought that was all bandages and stuff because he was all beat up or something.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a turban. I think it's some kind of cloth covering.
Yeah, because in the scene you see him in Empire Strikes Back, he just looks beat up,
right,
really badly. But here,
he does.
It's a visual familiarity when you see him jump up, and I'm like, oh my god, is that him? And I had to look up his name because I had forgotten what his name is, but it is Dengar, so that was kind of fun to see.
It is fun, yeah. And he survives beyond the Return of the Jedi as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if he possibly shows up in the series, to be honest,
because he is a bounty hunter. Yeah, and he's obviously been around for a long while because, like you said, this is quite a few years before our show, and yet here he is on the cartoon. Yeah. And you see him in Empire, And yeah, if he survives Return of the Jedi, why wouldn't they bring him back? That would be cool.
He was on Jabba's barge.
Okay.
But we found out in the novels that he did survive.
Cool.
So I think when everybody was going attacking Luke, I think he probably ran away.
Yeah, I'm saving myself.
Yeah.
Now, another good voice actor, which I had to look at the credits after because I'm like, I know these voices. Some of these sound familiar. And it was Katie Sackhoff playing Bo-Katan. Very cool.
Now, you have to remind me who she is.
Katie Sackhoff is well known from her Battlestar Galactica. She was Starbuck on Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So if you watch that show, then everyone would recognize her right away. I mean, she's done a few other things too, but right now that's what she's most popular for. Very cool. I got to meet her too. She's actually really fun in person. So
yeah, Bo-Katan becomes a very important character, and someone I think that is going to still continue being an important character throughout Star Wars.
Do you think there's a possibility we'll see her as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a high probability.
Very cool. Well, she comes up again a little bit in these next two episodes, I believe. Does she not? She's been around. She was in this three episode story arc.
She is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just pulled up Katie Sackhoff. I know exactly who that is. She's actually in Arrow, isn't she? Or Flash. She's in the Flash.
She did play a villain in Flash.
Yes.
I can't remember her character. She can control metal. She was
That's
able
right.
to throw metal around. Yeah, that's where she's most recently been seen for sure.
Wow, she can totally play Bo-Katan in real life. Like, that would be phenomenal.
Then let's land her. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving into the second last of our episodes here called Shades of Reason, which was season 5, episode 15. I have to admit that they had a pretty darn good plan to retake over the planet. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about Death Watch. That was a well thought out plan.
Yeah, again, Pre Vizsla's whole goal is to bring Mandalore back to the old days of keep bringing the warriors back in, and the only way you can do that is have the trust of the people. So this whole plan that he had, was to turn the minds of the people to say, you know what, we were wrong about Death Watch. They are here to protect us, and we need them going forward.
Right. Because he had it all set up to, even though he was working behind the scenes against everything, in order to get the people to believe in him, he had to make Death Watch look like they were the saviors to come in and say, because the planet was being taken over by all these nefarious gangs or whatever, like the underworld was basically
the crime syndicates,
like the crime syndicates and stuff, And so they decided to come in and pretend to be the saviors and save everybody, and they did it in front of the public, and the public's like, "Oh, Death Watch, they're actually here to help us," and it just worked. It was a good plan.
Yeah, this is kind of a visual cue to what we see in Darth Maul when he's briefly introduced in Solo, the movie. This is a hard connection, but in that movie, it's Crimson Dawn that he's, in charge of and leading, right? This is kind of the beginnings of his dive into the underworld, where he's collecting all of these crime syndicates, the Pikes, the Hutts, Black Sun, and it's not mentioned in this, but it's mentioned in canon that when he does this, he collects them all. It's called the Shadow Collective, is what he's creating. And so that's his bid to take over. And obviously his vision, you find out his vision of this is different than what Pre Vizsla's is. And they're kind of, fighting against each other behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Scheming. So it's a good little story there.
Very, very cool. What I was impressed with Pre Vizsla here is how adept of a fighter he is. It surprised me how good he was with the sword and the guns, and like he was taking on everybody and stood toe to toe with everyone. Like he was the hard guy to take down.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. You could clearly see that the training that they have, they can go against anybody, even Force users.
Cool. He was awesome. And that, because he was so good at fighting, I was equally or more so shocked that he actually goes down in this episode. I didn't expect. It seemed like he was going to be such a prominent character. I did not expect him to go down and be done.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I was surprised, but as this is season 5 at this point, so not knowing how many seasons we're going to be, at some point, some of these characters are going to have to die.
Yeah, that's true.
But it was surprising, and like you said, I was a little surprised after I watched it again too that the whole time they were fighting, I don't know if Maul chose not to use the Force because he really did, because he could have just started Force choking him and broke his neck, to beat him. But I feel like he had to win, straight up in order to win whatever remaining Mandalorians that were going to fall to his rule. They had to see that he could overcome Pre Vizsla by physical form, not just using the Force. So that's why I think he did it. But the whole time I'm watching, I'm thinking God, he can easily take this guy down technically, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, at least his grandson D Vizsla is going to continue the family legacy, right?
That's right. Give me that Darksaber. Oh, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So let's move on to our last episode, The Lawless, season 5, episode 16. And from what I can tell, it seems so far that only the bad guys are wearing the distinctive Mandalorian armor.
Yeah, so at this point, they're kind of painted red and representing Maul, and then some of them even have horns on their helmets, if you noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they've kind of accelerated really quickly in following Maul and kind of adapting Death Watch to Maul. He's in control of them now. But, Bo-Katan, as we saw at the end of the last episode, she didn't fall and support Maul. So she and some of the rogue Death Watch Mandalorians kind of went off to fight against them. So it was funny. It was cool seeing that her fighting against her own people in a sense. I mean, that's again harping back to the history of Mandalore. That's what they did. They just fought each other as well as the Jedi, and so it was cool to see that again come about.
Yeah, and she's just so cool. I actually ended up really liking her, and just I mean, she wants to be Mandalorian. She wants to fight for her planet and not be under control by the Empire and stuff. So she wants to do the right thing for her people, and she ends up just really, you can't really call it turning a leaf, but she ends up becoming really cool. I liked her right from the get-go, and yeah, she really grows on you. Now, you might laugh at this. I just have to ask it. Obi-Wan Kenobi, to me, just kind of came off a little bit clueless here. It just seems like he's not getting it in a lot of these scenes, in this, especially in this episode. And I just had to laugh. If this what he's like throughout the series, he just seems to be a little bit of got the blinders on, and he's not picking up on clues or social cues around him.
Yeah, no, I think this was a different episode for him. When he finds out, because he finds out with this distress call that Satine sends to him, they're the Jedi in a way at this point. They're not involved in Mandalore at all. They think that they're fighting amongst themselves. They're just kind of neutral system, and they're not. They don't even know. I mean, he didn't even know Maul's around at this point, right? So,
yeah.
It's interesting, yeah. He does come off as just clueless and not really finding and figuring it out fast enough.
Yeah. And the other thing I noticed is he doesn't. Every battle that he gets into, or he's getting into one-on-one fights, or he's fighting a group of guys, he doesn't use the Force very often. And yet, when you see Darth Maul's wielding the Force all the time, or Savages, you see them throwing it around, and Kenobi barely uses it when he should use it.
Yeah, I don't have an explanation for that one. That's tough to say. I don't know, but you're right. It seems like the dark side, they're pulling from it a lot more often, and maybe that is the thing, is that it's easier, more seductive, right? That's what Vader or Yoda says in in Empire Strikes Back. So I don't know. Maybe it's easier to use, but you shouldn't be using it like that. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe I would be swinging towards the dark side then. I don't know, because I would. If you're being attacked by 8 guys, hell yeah, I'm going to use the Force. I'm not going to sit there and try to shoot them all down with my pistol.
Yeah,
But
Obi-Wan has he does have some great fight scenes in the Clone Wars series. So
okay, cool. Well, that's a perfect segue, because who gets some really cool fight action this episode is Emperor Palpatine, which, wow, never seen that before. He is good with the lightsaber and his flipping around. He actually reminded me of Yoda when we saw Yoda in the prequel movies, that their fight style was very similar. And I was really impressed because at this point he still is kind of an elderly gentleman already. So to see him jumping around like that and fighting, wow, it was impressive.
It just completely shows the power of him, and like you said, Yoda, even though he's 900 years old, he's jumping around still. Yeah. So the age, really doesn't matter when you're fighting with the Force, and he is completely toying around with them. Like, those guys had no chance of defeating Palpatine. I mean, it's the first time we see him, which was pretty cool, because I remember the teaser trailer came out that season, and it showed him ignite 2 sabers.
Yeah.
And, oh, man, I was so I couldn't wait to see him fighting like that. And he just toys with them. I mean, he just, easily. I mean, he was not threatened at all in that fight.
No, well, he's fighting Darth Maul and his brother Savage, and you thought, like, really? But he, like you said, he toys with them. There was no chance at all for them. And it just really, it's a side of Emperor Palpatine that we've never gotten to see before, because he's such a withered old man in the movies, and all we see is him shoot lightning from his fingers. So you always had this feeling like, what is so bad about this guy? Why is everyone so scared? And why is he the emperor of everything? Like, you sense that he was powerful on the dark side, but you never got to see it. There was no visual proof of that. And finally seeing it here in this episode, you really sunk it in, like, whoa, okay, he is somebody to worry about.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And I think watching that again too the other day, I was thinking, like, wow, is this a preview or some kind of hint at what we may see again in The Rise of Skywalker with the return of Palpatine? Is he going to fight? Will he fight like this? It's like, but
that'll definitely need some CGI.
Yeah,
stunt people,
completely right. Well, they could use an actor that kind of looks like him. But like you said, though, this is a very good context of what kind of power he has and what his abilities are. Because when he fights in Episode 3, it also, that goes to show you how strong Mace Windu is and how powerful Mace Windu is.
Right.
Because he technically defeated him.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Which, I mean, up to that point, we don't know anything about Mace Windu either. So
that's right.
If there's some history on him somewhere, that'd be really cool to see.
Yeah, he has a comic series but it takes place during the Clone Wars, but it's not a lot of history about him.
Ah, okay. All right, well, that is it for our Clone Wars talk. Hopefully that gives everyone a little bit of info. I know we'd really just kind of brushed over things really quickly. Hopefully it was from the perspective that everyone had watched it with us. Otherwise, maybe a lot of this isn't going to make sense. So
yeah, or we just spoiled a bunch of stuff for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's move into Rebels now.
No disintegrations.
As you wish.
All right, so with Rebels, we actually don't go back to Mandalore at all, but we do see a lot of connection to things that have happened there, like political changes, the Empire taking over and ruling the planet, a lot of the family histories, things like that. Most of it relates to Sabine Wren and her ties to things and hints at a possible future for Mandalore from where it ends off.
Right.
I think it was pretty cool. I enjoy these episodes. I mean, Sabine Wren is one of probably my favorite character out of the Star Wars Rebels cast anyway. So it was neat to see a lot of a lot of story for her. You can see her going through some changes. She's having to learn and grow herself, and because she's a little bit cocky, a little bit full of attitude, doesn't want to listen to anyone, doesn't want anyone to tell her what to do. So it was neat to see her have to go through a few changes herself.
Yeah, you knew when this series debuted and she was wearing Mandalorian armor with the connection with Filoni, you just knew that we were going to get some kind of backstory with her or some connection to Mandalore. So it was just a matter of time. It took a couple seasons, but it was a matter of time till we got some more history of Mandalore.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's jump right into it then. The first episode is called Blood Sisters, and that was season 2, episode 8. And if you haven't really seen much of Rebels yet, part of the reason why I like her so much is she's just such a cool looking character. I mean, her armor is very unique because she's painted it herself, but it's just her hairstyle, her kind of very exotic look. There's just something about her. She looks really cool. She stands out amongst the other characters for sure.
She does. Yeah, very colorful. Like you said, very independent.
Now, the other thing is the droid, Chopper, is very R2-D2-like. And it makes, because he's got so much attitude, the droids always seem to have attitudes, these mech droids. And it makes me think, wait a second, R2 was the first droid we ever met, and he always had this kind of attitude. But Chopper comes before him, so maybe he's kind of the predecessor to the droids having this kind of attitude.
Kind of comes before him, but we know R2 was in the prequels too, so...
That's true. I guess you're right there.
Yeah, but he didn't really act like this though, until A New Hope, which is, you're right, because in the prequels he was very much just a companion. Yeah, helped you out of the problems you had and the situations you were in. Chopper does have a unique personality through this series, and not only just helps, but he does have an attitude about what they should and shouldn't be doing. Yeah.
And he refuses to go into situations if he doesn't want to go. He's very sentient in that way.
No, he's become a very popular droid.
All the droids are. They've never really failed with the droids in Star Wars.
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic characters. Now, this one focused a lot on Sabine and connecting with an old friend that she went through training with. And they ended up parting ways, due to the story, which you find out in here. But her friend brings up a lot of Sabine's bounty hunter past. And I wanted to ask you, do we know anything about it at all? Or is it just mentioned here and that's it?
About Sabine's? Or, yeah, it's briefly mentioned it here a little bit about, so Ketsu Ano is the woman that we're introduced to in this. And their brief history is that they both left Mandalore. She helped Ren get out of the Imperial Academy on Mandalore, basically, because they both went in as cadets, and they didn't want to stay there. So they both said that they were going to leave there and join Black Sun as bounty hunters. And what we learn in here is that she, as in Ketsu, tried to kill her or left her for dead, basically, and left and went and joined the bounty hunters. And then as Sabine collected herself, and then she left and obviously joined the Spectres.
Right.
And then this is the first time that they've come head to head with each other since then. So they were friends before, but again, she kind of chose her own path. Ketsu did, and left her for dead.
And this is all we see of it, though, is just this episode where they kind of spell it out for us.
That's right. Yeah, and Ketsu she does return later towards the end of the series.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because by the end of this episode, they end up becoming friends again, and she ends up joining the team, I'm guessing, briefly.
Well, she kind of goes off on her own, I think, at the end of this. Yeah, and then she comes back later.
Okay.
In the series.
Cool. Yeah. That's just cool. It's just, like I said, it's the start of Sabine's history that we're learning.
Exactly.
Which is really what this episode was about. All right, so moving on to Protector of Concord Dawn, which is episode 13 of season 2. Now, the first thing I noticed was those Concord ships when they first get to that system, and you see the the busted up planet. It's all broken up, but it's still being used as some type of base area, I guess the planet and its moons or whatever. These ships are really, really cool because the wings actually spin around the cockpit.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite ships. That's almost up there. Like, I love the X-Wings. That's my favorite classic ship, but this ship really wowed me. I thought, oh my God, those things are cool.
Really cool.
Do they have a name? I didn't catch a name for them if there was one.
I don't know the name of those, actually. You stumped me finally.
I need a sound. There we go.
Nice.
There it is.
Vehicles are the one thing I'm a little light on. I gotta look those up.
Cool. It was still a neat ship, whatever it was. It was a neat ship. Now, I wanted to ask about this. All the Mandalore helmets have this little antenna sticking out of the side of the helmet, and it's got it looks like a little solar panel or something on the top at the end of it. It turns out it's a type of scanner. This is the first time I've ever seen it use it. You never saw Boba Fett use it. You never saw Jango Fett use it. You see Sabine use it here. She flips it down and it becomes like an eyepiece, and it's some type of scanner. I've never seen that being used. Is this the first time that they use it? And is that exactly what they do? Is that what they've always been?
You know what? That is the first time that I recall also that they've ever shown that. So I'm assuming that, yes, that's how it's always been. We just never seen anybody use it. So Boba Fett, I guess that he could have brought that thing down and used it like that. But no, this is the first time we've seen that. And it's not the last time we will see that either. So clearly that's what it is for. Some kind of scanner, some kind of telescopic vision, I guess. You can kind of see things zoomed in.
It's probably got multiple purposes, because I always thought it was an antenna of some kind. So for communication or for a link to the ship or something. That's what I always thought it was.
I did too. I totally thought it was just communication relay or something like that for their helmets.
But still, nice, cool added touch. Maybe it does both. Yeah, very, very cool. Now, we also hear about Sabine's mom in this episode, and we hear that she was part of Death Watch. Do you have a little bit of history on that?
I don't. I think she was, but like most clans, they were always fighting amongst each other. But she separated from there and went back to their home planet to kind of be with her family and separate themselves from what Death Watch was actually doing, which was trying to, like we said, take over Mandalore again.
Right.
So she wasn't kind of believing in that mode of thinking, and that we didn't want to be a part of that. So she kind of separated and went back to her planet with her family.
Okay, cool. I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
All right. Anything out of this episode we can pull out?
Not really. I mean, I think we get introduced to a couple of characters that we see later, which is Fen Rao, who is the protector of Concord Dawn, and then we get introduced to his group of protectors. So later on, they will become more of prominent characters as the season goes on, and we learn more about what happens to her family, Sabine's family.
Right. Yeah, and that comes up actually in a couple episodes from now, too. Okay, cool. Well, let's move into Imperial Super Commandos, which is Season 3, Episode 7. Now, I'm going to bring something up here because it actually has bugged me for a long time. Chopper having that rocket booster when he starts flying around like a little Superman robot, it just makes me groan. It's the same thing when we saw R2-D2 use it in the prequel movies, especially because he never had rocket boosters in the original movies. So it's like, well, the prequels are supposed to be earlier in history, so why does he have rockets then and not later? Well, obviously, on the reality side of things, it's budget and whatever. But why they added it to the prequels, why they give him something that they never had before, doesn't make any sense to me. And it's just something that bugs me to see these droids have these rocket boosters and can fly around and do whatever. It's a little bit too much on the childish side for me. It's something you would expect in a little 0 to 12 age range kind of kids show. it's just a little bit silly for me. I don't know. What do you feel about droids with rocket boosters?
Yeah, R2 and Chopper, I think, are the only ones we've seen that can do that. It is a little, Chopper's though. It seems like it's this entire bottom portion of his body, right? So it seems like it's a big kind of booster, rocket booster, right? Which kind of makes sense. With R2, it's those two little boosters that come out of his legs.
Yeah.
And I actually thought about that whenever we saw it in Attack of the Clones for the first time. I'm thinking that's a lot of power. That's because he's a heavy droid.
Yeah.
And those two little rockets, I don't know if they can actually pick him up, but but Chopper's is definitely, it's like his whole bottom piece, of his body, and it kind of makes sense, I guess. But you're right. I mean, it kind of just answers the question of how they're going to get from one place to the other really fast. Well, you got to make them fly, I guess.
Yeah, it's just, but I mean, maybe it's a little too nitpicky. But I mean, where's the fuel source? Because in the one one episode here, he's flying around for a long time. Not in this episode, but in one of the later episodes, they're flying through Grand Canyons type of things. There's this huge chase sequence with a bunch of Mandalorian armor guys chasing them down, and they're flying for like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
come on, Well, it's a little too. It's just me. I mean, but that's where the kid, like I said, the kid stuff come in. Because as a kid, you think, oh my god, that's so awesome. You would freak out about that kind of stuff, but a little bit too much for me. Droids with rocket boosters. Come on, you don't see C-3PO throwing a jetpack and start flying around.
Yeah.
Now, okay, let's get to a serious question here. Viceroy of Mandalore. That was the rank of one of the characters in this episode. What level is that rank? What is Viceroy? Is it above? Because we've seen Prime Minister of Mandalore, but what is Viceroy of Mandalore? Where is that?
So a Viceroy in the Star Wars galaxy is it could be any high-ranking position. It doesn't really completely spell out a specific rank. So there's different organizations that have viceroys, and they could be the same level as a senator. They could be in charge of a specific organization or a part of the planet. Obviously the biggest or the most recognizable one, I think, at least to me, was the Viceroy of the Trade Federation, right? When we got introduced to Episode 1 to...
the prequels, yeah.
Yeah, Newt Gunray, he was the Viceroy of the Trade Federation, meaning that he was in charge of the Trade Federation. So he definitely had somebody above him that was kind of the president or the leader of it. So, but he was mainly in charge of that sector of it or that part of the Federation. So in this instance, it's somebody that's high-ranking that is in charge of something. We just don't necessarily know exactly what, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the guy that was given that status was Gar Saxon. Who we got introduced to, and he is part of the House Vizsla. That surprised me. Because he's quite a bad guy himself. At least he's the one who's working with the Empire to take over Mandalore.
Yes, and I think I mentioned it maybe on one of these episodes, but Gar Saxon... his first introduction was a comic back when, so real quick, the end of Clone Wars that we just talked about, where Palpatine fights Maul. Spoiler, Maul doesn't die. He actually keeps him alive and imprisons him. Palpatine imprisons Maul. Well, during imprisonment, Gar Saxon comes and rescues him. And that was our first introduction of Gar Saxon. So that was in a comic book series that was supposed to be episodes of the Clone Wars that they translated to comics.
Okay.
And so we have not heard of him or seen him since then until this episode. Interesting.
Now, a feeling that I was getting out of this episode, just with the way the different Mandalorian characters were behaving, we've heard the Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all, kind of that's their motto. It seems like Mandalorians have a different play on that. It seems like they have a motto of all for one, but one has it all.
That's very good. That's very true. I think that's exactly how to describe them.
Because there's just so many of them, like you said, they all fight each other, because they all want to have the ultimate power. They all want to rule. They all want to be in charge. But yet, underneath all of that, they're always like, "Oh, you're from Mandalore. Oh, it's for the greater good of Mandalorian. Mandalorians, we got to keep strong." Like they're always about keeping their people and their planet together. It's just they disagree on who should be in charge of that and which way they should go about doing it.
Yeah,
So
it's very similar to what we used to know of the Sith Empire.
Mm-hmm.
They had that kind of same mentality where everybody's kind of grouped together with, they were part of the same family and the same organization, civilization, but they all fought each other for power.
Right. Yeah, it was just
Very
funny
interesting.
It's really standing out, especially throughout this episode, just how it's coming to be. Now, I wanted to ask you, we see Sabine grab a jetpack in this episode, and she says something like, "Oh, I've always wanted one of these or something," and she clicks it on and starts flying around, and she seemed to pick it up right away. Is this the first time she's ever had a jetpack part of her Mandalorian suit?
If I recall, on Rebels, it is the first time we see her have that.
Okay.
On Rebels. Whether or not she had it before, I'm not sure, but I think that she wasn't flying around ever before.
No, well, because it sounds like she, I can't remember if it was this episode or the one before, but she makes a mention of, someone accuses her, "Oh, you shouldn't be wearing that armor," and she says, I have been piecing this armor together. It's my own creation, whatever. I've been working on it. So that's what led me to believe that she maybe just hasn't gotten to adding a jetpack to it yet. So that's why she was kind of excited to get one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another little point here, there was a Lando Calrissian shout out in this episode, which I thought was fun. So that was a nice little connection.
Yeah, Lando's been in Rebels a couple times. Yeah.
Oh, has he? Okay,
Oh, yeah.
cool.
Voiced by Billy D. Williams.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I can't wait to get to those episodes.
Yeah.
Fun. All right, let's move on to Visions and Voices, Season 3, Episode 11. Here's something I didn't know, and tell me if it's true. Darth Maul states that he is the last of his kind. I didn't know that. Is that true?
Yes. So Dathomir, where he's from, yeah, the Empire goes there and basically wipes out the Night Sisters and all the rest of their warriors there. So he is pretty much the last.
Now,
Yes.
what is his race? Or is Maul what they're called? What are they called?
They're called Zabraks. Zabraks. Yeah.
Cool.
They're the
So
ones with the
he is
horns on their heads. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's the last one. So he can't even find a woman Sabrak and repopulate. he's it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is mistaken. I mean, he's not fully correct. I mean, because we do hear of Zabraks later.
Okay.
So maybe from Dathomir. I don't know if there's. I'd have to do a little research on if the Zabraks are anywhere else, but on Dathomir, I think where he's talking about where he's from, they all got wiped out. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Now, what I noticed in this episode is that he doesn't come off as so much of a bad guy. He's actually seeming to help Ezra and wants to work with him because he connects with him on this feeling of wanting connection to family and to your ancestry and to your past, to your home planet. So the way he comes across in working with Ezra is like, you know what? He's actually not that bad of a guy. He's hurting right now. At least that's the feeling that I got through.
Yeah.
The
How
first
deception.
part of this episode. Yeah. I guess
Deception is part of the dark side.
so he deceived me even.
Yeah. His motivations are clear and abundant of what he's trying to do, and I think you do mention it in the notes here about where he's trying to go and what he's trying to find out.
Yeah, because they mentioned that they're trying to find this planet with two suns, and of course, the only one I know of, which we should all recognize, is Tatooine, because that's in like the establishing opening shot of Luke looking at the sunsets.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of put it together, right? Who is on Tatooine?
Well, it's Obi-Wan.
That's right.
That's who he's searching for. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, it's an incredible story. Aside from the whole Mandalore stuff, it's like,
yeah,
the story from Episode 1 where he defeats Darth Maul, and years later, it's like he's still obsessed with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the culmination of what happens in Rebels between the two of them is beautiful. And I'm not going to spoil anything. You got to watch it.
Yeah, well, because all we know, Obi-Wan's the one who cuts him in half, thinking he killed him. So, yeah, they've got that very powerful connection, and obviously it's a element of revenge for Darth Maul. But yeah, fascinating story. That's very, very cool, and it's a neat tie-in to the original trilogy, and where we first ever met Obi-Wan Kenobi, and so it's cool. And the fact that he's obviously been there for many, many years. So Darth Maul is looking for a little bit younger version of him than what we saw in A New Hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Fascinating background story, apart from, like you said, this Mandalore stuff that we're looking into right now. Let's move on to the next one, which just got a really cool title, and that's Trials of the Darksaber, and that was Season 3, Episode 15. Now here, you've already mentioned his name, Tar Vizsla, and we get a little bit more history about him, and I believe you brought it up in previous episodes when we were talking about this Mandalorian backstory. He is the first ever Mandalorian that got inducted into the Jedi, and there was something about the Darksaber. It got created for him or given to him because he's the first Mandalorian. What's the story there?
He created the Darksaber.
He created it because they mentioned it here.
Do what?
They mentioned it in the episode.
Yes.
Right after that. He's the first ever, and then the next line after that was something about because of being the first Mandalorian. So it was he created the Darksaber.
Yeah, I'm guessing when he got into the Jedi Order, most Jedi have to create their sabers.
Okay.
So
yeah, see that makes sense then.
Right. So I think he created the Darksaber, which was obviously very unique in the Order because no other person or Jedi had a black blade.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I mentioned, like, I'm not sure how it's got a black blade. I don't know why yet. I don't think we've been told that yet. Maybe that's what we find out in The Mandalorian.
That'd be a cool thing to find out. Yeah. Well, cool. So yeah, we find out a bit about Tar Vizsla in this one anyway.
But he ends up leaving the Jedi Order and going back to rule Mandalore as the MandaLore. And they keep the saber, as in the Jedi keep the saber, the Darksaber, in the temple.
Okay. So he doesn't have it with him.
He doesn't, but the Mandalorians go back and take it. Pre Vizsla even mentioned that too in one of the episodes where they go back and raid the temple and take it. So then he ends up ruling Mandalore with the Darksaber.
Actually, they showed that in one of these episodes when he was telling the story.
That's right.
And it was like through some cave drawings
that
were being animated. That was a really, really cool sequence to show that story being told.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, really,
it's
really
awesome.
Cool. Now, something that got brought up in this episode, which I just the idea of it, is when Sabine gets the Darksaber and they're talking about how she can reclaim the leadership of Mandalore and lead all the houses to peace and prosperity again. And I thought, wow, that would be pretty cool. Imagine Sabine, the leader of Mandalore.
That would be awesome. I remember watching that too for the first time and thinking, she's got the saber. This is her destiny. This is going to be pretty awesome to see. Yeah.
And then she just hands it off.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
Almost.
Almost, yeah. Now, while staying on Sabine here, she gets given a pair of Vanguard bracers with, that's part of the Mandalorian gear, and they got all these defensive gadgets built into them that were designed to fight against the Jedi, which is what we were talking about in the last episode, and it was just cool to see that come to fruition and them actually talk about it, saying, hey, here's these bracers, it's specifically for defending yourself against Jedi.
Yeah, I know. They thought
pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, when you're fighting Jedis over, time and time again, you have to have weapons to combat them. So yeah, they've got plenty of them.
Yeah, and they work too because she put them to good use, and you see some of the other warriors using it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this came out in this episode, and it really made my eyebrows go up. That she says she helped the Empire design the weapon that they are now employing to take over planets. And I was wondering, what weapon could that be? Is she talking about it, like this was a far reach? Like, could she be leading into the Death Star itself, perhaps? What is this weapon? Do we ever find out what this weapon is that she designed?
I don't think so. I don't think we do. Not that I recall either when I was rewatching some of these. Is that I don't think it was the Death Star, but I think it's something to combat. I thought it was something to combat the Mandalorians, because I think that's where she was kind of feeling like she betrayed her family in a sense,
right?
Right. So I think it was something with the Mandalorian armor for some reason. That I think that as you go into a little bit more down in the dirt, that that she was helping build against them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just interested because the way she talked about it. I mean, a really cool background story for her. It really gives her character a lot of depth.
Very much.
As to why she feels guilty, why she feels like she betrayed her family and her house and her planet, and why a lot of them are so angry with her. It's a really good background story for her. But just the fact that she was so upset about, like, I designed the weapon that they're now using. And it just led me down the path of all these what ifs. Like, well, what if maybe it's the initial plans to something that they work on that leads to a bigger weapon. I don't know. I just was going all over the place because she was pretty upset about it.
Interesting, yeah.
All right, well, let's move into the last episode called Legacy of Mandalore, Season 3, Episode 16. This was a great episode. There was a lot of stuff that came out, which I taught me a lot because I was learning about Sabine and learning about the history of the Mandalorians. And one of the things that came out here was that her home planet is not Mandalore. It's called Kronos. And you kind of already led into it. I was asking you how many planets and moons are in the Mandalore system. So we already talked about that. So one of these planets that she's from is Kronos. And I thought that was kind of fascinating.
Yeah, so this is the one that you mentioned too, about it being covered in snow and ice.
Yeah. Which to me, like, it looks like it's a winter planet, which we all know a similar planet called Hoth.
That's right.
And I just thought it's kind of cool because we're playing on the jokes. Sabine Wren, my name is Cyber Wren. She lives on a winter planet, or she's from Winter Planet. Well,
that's right.
I'm from Canada, which the entire world thinks is constantly in snow anyway. That we're just,
isn't it?
Yeah. See, my backstory is being written for me, and I don't even have to do anything. It's all being pulled out of all of this stuff. So there you go.
Nice.
Cyber Wren from the House Wren, who's from a wintry planet. Makes sense to me.
Very much.
Now, here's a twist that I kind of liked, was the Empire working with the Mandalore, and I noticed that a lot of the Empire's soldiers that were working they kind of had, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but they had their own modified version of the Mandalorian armor. It was like a cross between Stormtrooper armor and Mandalorian armor. Am I right in that?
I think so. No, I think they did definitely. Yeah, I think they definitely adapted some of that for sure.
So my question is this: why would the Empire not continue to use that and equip all their Stormtroopers with it? Because it was obviously far superior to a normal Stormtrooper.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if, it's a big question whether or not, because we keep talking about Beskar. It's a big question of whether or not that actually ran out or it became a rare element,
Well, it sounds like it did. That's why it's so expensive.
Right. So maybe they didn't have enough armor, they couldn't make enough of that armor from that. So
yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, even just the design, like, why wouldn't they just use the design? Because they could have flying stormtroopers, and
yeah, you're right. Which they do. I mean, we've seen some troopers flying around in jetpacks in other mediums, but
yeah, still it was cool. I just thought that's.
But they kind of adapted the look of the clone troopers more so.
Yeah, that's true. That's what it eventually turns into. Yeah, you're right. Now we get introduced to Sabine's mom finally, who is Ursa Wren, which I was asking you about before, whether she was part of Death Watch. And she's not so happy to see Sabine. There's a lot of family history that we get revealed to here.
Right, and that's what comes back down to whether or not because she left the academy, like we mentioned, she kind of ran and wanted to become a bounty hunter and work for the syndicates and not stay with her family. So she hadn't seen her family in forever. And then, of course, there's that, like you just mentioned, about betraying somehow with this weapon that she helped the Empire kind of create while she was at the academy too. And yeah, her family's definitely not happy to see her in this episode at all.
No, not at all. It was neat. I mean, we find out she's got a brother, and her brother, you can tell her brother still cares for her a lot because he doesn't quite want to, at least in the beginning anyway, he doesn't quite want to hurt her or take her captive or throw her in jail like their mom is demanding. So it was neat to meet that, this really filled in Sabine's backstory quite a bit.
Right. Now,
she gets into a fight with Saxon near the end of the episode here, and that was quite an epic fight because she draws the darksaber. No, he has the darksaber. She gets tossed the green lightsaber from Ezra, and she has this one-on-one fight with him to prove who should be the ultimate owner of the darksaber.
Right. No, yeah, great fight. You really felt it with her, and it's a great culmination of her storyline in this series, for sure.
Yeah, and now that you said that, I have to ask you, is this where she leaves the show? Because she doesn't go with the team on the Ghost. She stays behind on her home planet with her family. Is that the end of Sabine's story in Rebels?
It is not.
Okay, so she does come back.
Yes, she has a lot of stories still.
Okay, good. No spoilers there. I was just curious because, like you said, it's...
You'll be proud of her.
Cool. Awesome. Now, now I got some questions. So this is season 3, episode 16 of Rebels. There's a full season 4. Does it ever go back to Mandalore? Do we ever go back to see where Mandalore is after this episode? Because this episode has a lot about them. She's the leader or the owner of the Darksaber now. They're going to try to retake over the planet and put proper leadership back in control, get the houses working together, all that kind of stuff. Do they ever go back to show us where Mandalore is at after this episode?
We do not. Season 4 goes back to where it all began. They go back to Lothal, which is where the planet that we are introduced to these group of rebels in season 1. And they are trying to free that planet from the Empire occupation, which has to do with Grand Admiral Thrawn,
right?
Who has occupied Lothal and he's trying to build these new TIE fighters on that planet, and they go back there, and so all of season 4 is basically wrapping up, that storyline with them, and Sabine does help them with that.
Okay. Interesting. I was just curious because, I mean, up to this point, Mandalore is never mentioned in the movies, not once. And I was just wondering if Rebels kind of ties into that as to explain why we never hear about it in the movies. And then I'm wondering about, will our new show, The Mandalorian, maybe we get to see why, see where the planet has gotten to, because if this is the last of it we see in Rebels, and there's still another season of Rebels, and then we go through all the movies, still no mention of Mandalore, in our new show, will we finally get to see what has become of Mandalore?
I sure hope so. I mean, I think with Werner Herzog's line about him, what the Empire has done to your people.
Yeah.
I think something happened during the original trilogy that we don't know of. As we see in the movie Solo, the Empire was just occupying worlds to control their resources, to establish rule. And somehow Mandalore has to be on Palpatine's hit list because it was in the Clone Wars. So something happened where Mandalore I just don't think they're just a freewheeling society out there in the Outer Rim. Something happened, and I think we're going to get a lot of history of that throughout this series.
So do you think in flashbacks they might show that to us, or just in telling us the story through characters talking about it?
Yeah, more likely just characters talking, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see flashbacks, of Mandalore in the city there. I mean, that would be incredible. I mean, it could be that, maybe he goes back to Mandalore and then we see flashbacks as he's walking around and seeing stuff, So yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Well, you know what? I mean, there's the theory that we talked about last week about Sabine Wren herself possibly showing up on the show. So maybe if she does, it's through her that we find out what has happened to Mandalore and what state it's in now.
Mm-hmm.
That could be great, I think.
That could be really good.
Maybe he goes back with her. Maybe they run into each other and she's like, you need to come home and see what's going on or whatever. And who knows? Yeah,
wow,
that would be awesome. That'd be a great connection.
That would be.
Oh, fingers crossed for a lot of these things. We only got 8 episodes to fit a lot in, so we'll have to see what's going on. Now, I'm gonna end this on a funny tidbit here I want to throw in, because I just had to laugh through all of these episodes of Rebels, especially Rebels. I always laugh at cartoons and even in live action. I was talking about this on my Tomorrow's Legends podcast quite a bit too. When we see people punching other people that are in full armor, full gear, and they're wearing helmets, and they're hauling off and punching them with their bare hands, and it knocks them out. That drives me crazy for fight choreography, because if you're going to punch a guy with your bare hand and he's wearing a full piece of armor in his helmet, you are not going to knock him out. You're going to break your hand. It's not even going to phase him. And I was laughing at this because there were so many fights in these last couple episodes where they're punching out, whether it's Mandalorian troopers or stormtroopers, they're getting knocked out with hand-to-hand combat. And it drives me crazy.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think that's, I don't know how that's, because you remember Obi-Wan hits Jango in the mask while he's fighting him on Camino. Uh-huh. Yeah, so you're exactly right. I mean, how does it not break his hand? I don't know. It's funny.
It drives me crazy. It drives me. You cannot knock someone out with a barehanded punch to a helmet. No way.
No way.
All right, everybody. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that kind of a recounting of all the episodes there, and you guys watched along with us, so you know what the heck we're talking about. What we want to get from you guys is feedback, because our show starts in 2 days and we want to get feedback in. We want to build a community around the show and have everyone sharing their thoughts. So we want to make sure you remember how to get feedback in. This is how you do it. Listen to this.
If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can send in feedback to themandalorepodcast at gmail.com. And also join our Facebook group. Otherwise, if you don't, we'll put a bounty on your head.
And that about does it for us, Dave. Or D. Vizsla. I should call it David Vizsla. We got 2 days to go until the premiere. Who's going to be able to sleep in these next 2 days?
Not me.
Yeah, not me either. So we're going to be recording the first episode Wednesday night. That's this week. We're going to release on Thursday. So you guys have 24 hours to get in that feedback that we want you to get in. We're only going to be doing this first week because the second episode is this Friday, which kind of puts us on our much tighter schedule. But then that gets us on our normal podcast schedule, and that's actually recording Sunday nights with a Monday morning release. So you'll actually have 2 days to get in feedback after that. So it's just this first week. It premieres on Tuesday, and we record Wednesday night with a release on Thursday morning. So hopefully that makes sense, because Friday is the next episode. So we want to make sure you guys can listen to us at least a day before the next episode. And I think that's all I got. You got anything else to add there, D. Vizsla?
No, just very excited, man. This is going to be, I think this is really going to be a good series. I'm not just saying that. I think I think Star Wars fans have been looking for this for years.
Yeah, I think we've all been waiting to have Star Wars, on a weekly basis. You don't have to wait 3 years for the next movie or anything along those lines. I am so excited. And just from the amount of trailers and teasers and everything we've seen, I'm so amped up for this show. I cannot wait.
Yeah, and the bottom line is this thing is made by die-hard Star Wars fans in Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. It's
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be a big swing and a hit. They're not going to miss with this one at all. So, until Tuesday, guys, I mean, reach out to us. Join the Facebook group, MandaLore Podcast. Get on Twitter. David's been twittering like crazy, tweeting. I don't even use it enough to know what the heck I'm talking about. He's been tweeting like crazy at the MandaLore Pod. Get on there and talk to us if you have anything to say. And definitely come check us out and be with us on the show. That's all I got for now. I cannot wait. A couple sleeps. That is it for me. This is Cyber Ren signing off.
This is D. Vizsla. May the Force be with you.
The Mandalore is not affiliated with Disney, Lucasfilm, or Fairview Entertainment. This is a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only. All music and sound effects are solely owned by their respective properties.